I'm going to show you the best build in Armored Core 6 for most of the game. Now, obviously, you can make the game work with a lot of different builds, and you can make it work based on your skill level and different things. But with this build, it takes a minimal amount of skill level to get a maximal amount of output, basically, in the game. This one's going to be really good. It'll last you through most of the game until you get, like, coral weapons and things like that on your, like, second, third playthroughs and stuff. This one will make the game way easier, and honestly, it's really, really fun to use. I really, really, really like this build. So what this build is going to revolve around is you're going to get the Gatling guns as your main weapons, and you're going to put those on both hands, mainly because they do a ton of damage, and they do a ton of stagger damage or stun damage. And then on the shoulders, you're going to put down the stun needle launchers, because these things are totally broken, especially for any casual player, because when an enemy uses a dodge, they have a little bit of downtime usually, and if you're up close and you use these, the speed of that projectile is so fast that you can almost always hit them. And if you hit both at the same time for a lot of enemies, that will instantly stun them, which is just really good, and it does a ton of damage when you do that. And then after that, for the gear, it's really about the legs. So when it comes to the body of this build, it's mainly putting on the strongest legs that you can get that can carry the most weight. That's really all that matters. And so this build in particular, I just have these legs on, and then I have these arms on, and this head, this core, and then this head. And really, though, any of these parts, that's really not important. The main thing is just having the legs, because there might be better legs for me to put on, but this one's pretty good. This one's like extremely high load that it can carry, but while still maintaining legs. Because a lot of people like to put a build with the tank legs, and I personally can't stand not having that maneuverability of being able to move in all directions whenever I want. It dumbs down the game in a way that feels awful to me, and it's just tough to deal with. So I much prefer actual legs. So if you go with these, it'll let you put on a lot of very, very tanky armor to increase your AP, which is just really good for this build, because you just want to get in point blank on someone and then stun needle them, and it makes every boss fight, everything super, super easy. As for the boosters, I have a specialty one that I really, really highly recommend getting. I don't know, maybe there's other boosters that I haven't found just yet, but out of all the ones I've tested, I'm on my first New Game Plus halfway through it, but out of all the ones I've tested, this one is by far the most fun and most helpful, actually. So the way this one works is you can't boost as long or as quick or anything, especially when you have this much weight on, but it lets you boost rapidly. You can do the quick dodge boost very, very quickly, which is nice, because especially if you're a newer player, if you dodge at the wrong time, you have a better chance of getting another dodge before an attack hits you. So it makes up for human error a lot, and that makes you just have a more consistent time and make it way easier to win fights and stuff. So, and then the FCS, there's probably a better one I could have gotten by now, but I just went with this one for more close range and especially medium range assist for the Gatling guns and the stun needle launchers. And then the battery pack is just a VP20D. It's pretty much the only battery pack that can support all this energy output or energy load. So that's probably what you're going to have to run. There might be one you can find somewhere that's, going to be a little bit better that can still do that much energy load. But this one's like the main one you get that is high energy load. And the best part about this build, and I'll get to the gills in a sec. I just remember I need to tell you where to get the gills. But best thing about this build is you can get all these things by the end of Chapter 3. Except for the booster. Everything else you can just buy in the store by the end of Chapter 3. These ones in particular, the mission before the end of Chapter 3. After you beat it, you'll unlock these, the stun needle launchers. As for the gills came from a mission in Chapter 4. So right after the end of Chapter 3, there's a mission in Chapter 4 called Underground Exploration Depth 2. And there's a few different side rooms in here that have random pieces of random parts. And there was one where it leads you to a door that's a dead end, and then you turn around and go back out and find a different way. Well, in that area, there's a side room right in there. Like when you're heading in there, it's on your right, or when you're leaving, it's on your left. And in there will be a chest. If you can't find it, just run around and look for the chest. It'll be in there. I'll make a guide for it at some point. If I do, I'll put it in the description of this video. But that's where you get the gills. And with all that, you'll be able to just farm enemies like crazy. This build is absolutely broken. It's the easiest to use, highest value build in the game, probably, at least until you've beaten New Game Plus a few times and gotten all the coral weapons and stuff like that. But now let's take a look at some of the actual applications of this. So let's look at some clips from different boss fights. I think boss fights is probably the most useful thing to look at when trying to see if a build is good, because the normal enemies are usually pretty easy. The real big thing in this, can you beat fast enemies? So we're gonna take a look at Cell 240. The main thing is a lot of these enemies, you can beat them with this by not even letting them get their attacks off. So Cell 240, for example, can use some really powerful, very hard to dodge attacks. But with this build, whenever the boss goes for a heavy attack, if you can get it, you can double stun needle them right as they start off their heavy attack, and then stun them and stop them from doing their heavy attack. Also, you can just get through a boss fight so fast that you might actually be able to get through a boss fight without seeing any of their really dangerous attacks, which is really the case for Cell 240. So with Cell 240, I mean, you're guaranteed to clear this thing sooner or later just by brute force, because you'll get a lucky fight where you're able to stun and then Gatling gun, take away half the HP, get another stun, Gatling gun, take away half the HP, get to stage 2, and then kind of have a similar type of thing happen. It's like a guaranteed fallback of, even if you aren't very skilled at the game, you'll still be able to beat the bosses pretty easily. But if you are skilled at the game, this build actually has enough usability and mobility and stuff to still be able to dodge attacks and do everything right and stuff. Now, obviously, it's not a fast mech, but because of the gills, you have enough dodges to actually be able to effectively dodge most attacks. You have enough boost time to be able to, I don't know what it's called, thrust boost, the one where the long boost going forward. You can do that for a long enough time to, get into a good position in the air and do different things, fly right past missiles and stuff. I mean, this thing is just good all around. It's really, really good. It's got a lot of usability. And the Gatling guns, we're going to take a look at the Vespers fight. The Gatling guns are insanely good for those fast mech fights where there's ones just flying around everywhere. The stun needles are also still insanely good against guys like the ones you're seeing now, because if you get close enough, then when they finish a dodge, you'll see it make a sudden dodge, and then you just stun needle and you can just blast them a lot of the time. Even if they seem like the fastest mech in the game, the stun needle can usually get them if you're close enough and they just made a fast movement, then you can just obliterate them basically. But if you can't, the Gatling guns are a fallback that are guaranteed to slowly whittle them down. Even if they're dodging, the Gatling guns will get continuous damage on them if you're close enough. And Gatling guns have a decent range too, actually. I mean, they're pretty close range, but they actually go pretty far. So that will make that way easier for you to just get that consistent damage and eventually stun them. And then once you stun them, if maybe your Gatling guns are overheated, you can at least do them with the double stun needle and back off and get a huge burst of damage on them. So even the Vespers fight, it made it just so easy compared to most other builds. It's just like, with a little bit of practice, you can do one of these fights and just take almost no damage if things go well. And then let's take a look at Baltius. This is one of the most frustrating fights for a lot of people, and it's because it's a DPS like arms race basically, and there is a lot of dodging to it and stuff too. And I made a guide for that if you ever want to check that out. But with Baltius, for example, with this build, the stun needles have such a long range that he has a ton of shield. He'll go really fast and fly away, and then he'll stop, and you don't have to get very close then when he stopped to use the double stun needles, and no matter what, hit him and take away half his shield, and then just stay alive or get closer, try to Gatling gun him, and then just double stun needle again as soon as you get it. And if you're point blank on a boss as big as Baltius, you can double stun needle and just no matter what hit basically. So it makes boss fights like Baltius pathetically easy. If you can get the stun without having your Gatling guns overheated, then you can just spam out your Gatling guns till they overheat and quickly do over like 5 seconds, maybe 10,000 damage or something like that. And it's just crazy how much damage you can do. If you get a good fight against Baltius, you can probably get him in like 4 to 5 stuns, and the fight's over. And those stuns are very, very easy to get with this build. This build is extremely good. And having the gills is extremely good for dodging his different attacks. And also another little trick is the stun needles will stop your fall and you'll float in the air, so that helps you to hang out in the air just a little bit longer. It's not as good as a double laser build for that, but it's still insanely good. So with all that, it makes a fight like Baltius so easy. It's just a cakewalk. Like, I went back to him now to get an S rank on the level, and it was pathetic. It was just like, he's not even a hard boss anymore. It's just like, it's just a cakewalk. I mean, just the range on the stun needles and the stun potential, how much shield it breaks, absolutely insane. And then last, we're gonna look at the Sea Spider, and this one, again, you've already, by this point, get the point of this build. It's just easy. You have the gills, you can just stay right on him. You can just spam with stun needles. You can easily dodge the attacks with the gills, and then you can just Gatling gun to death and stun needle him to death. The Sea Spider is probably the easiest boss to beat with this build out of all the bosses you can fight with this build, because it's just so easy to hit him and consistently just dodge around him and just blast the hell out of him. So it's just crazy. I don't even need to show you the whole Sea Spider fight. Even just from the clips you're watching now, you get the point. This thing is just such a hard counter to like everything in this game. So the biggest weakness, I guess, is fast mechs, but even them, they're not really a weakness. You can just easily beat them basically. So they're going to give you the most trouble, but if you just stay medium to close range and then just double stun needle on their downtime between dodges, you just kill them. Like, it's easy. So that's it, guys. That is the build. You can change out the armor with whatever you want, but the main thing is just having these legs on so that you can get as much armor as you can possibly put on it and carry these heavy weapons as well. But you can try to mix it up any which way you want, customize it a little bit, but the main thing is having these weapons and this booster. And then, I don't know, I personally like to have as much AP as possible because I have to get so close. It's possible to get stunned pretty easily and then take like 7,000 damage in the bad scenario. But that's just me. So hopefully that helps you out, guys. That's the build. It's a really, really good build. If you are newer to the game or are struggling at all, then I highly recommend this build. It makes the game super easy. But yeah, that's my build. It's the first build that I'm showcasing. I'm going to look up other builds, or not look up, I'm going to try to make up other builds and stuff for you guys, and then I'll post about those in the future. But that's this build, and hopefully this one helps you out, guys. It's a really strong build in Armored Core 6.